Lydia, a 32-year-old senior marketing manager, had everything going for her. She lived in a city she once loved, working for a major tech firm, and was on the verge of marrying the man of her dreams, Jacob. The proposal had been perfect, romantic, thoughtful, everything she'd imagined. But soon after, Lydia realized something was off. Her wedding, once a symbol of her love and future, was slowly being turned into a grand spectacle. And not by her. Something much bigger was at play, and Lydia was about to find out what. The night Jacob proposed was everything Lydia had imagined, and more. It was one of those rare moments where everything fell into place, effortlessly beautiful. The restaurant, a dimly lit rooftop with a view of the city skyline, was the perfect backdrop for what she thought would be the beginning of their forever. The soft hum of background chatter, the clinking of wine glasses, and the cool evening air all seemed to melt away when Jacob dropped to one knee. Time slowed, his eyes locked onto hers, full of sincerity, as he spoke words that made her heart swell. "Lydia, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." And with that, he held out a small velvet box, revealing a cushion-cut diamond ring that sparkled under the soft restaurant lights. It wasn't just the diamond that caught her eye, though it was the way the ring seemed to capture the very essence of their relationship. It was timeless, elegant, and beautiful, just like their connection. She couldn't help but gasp in awe. Jacob had chosen it so thoughtfully, knowing how much she admired classic, understated beauty. This was the ring she had always dreamed of, but never in a million years did she expect to see it on her finger. Her breath hitched as she stared at him, her mind racing, her heart pounding. Tears welled up in her eyes, and before she could even gather the right words, she heard herself whispering a simple, "Yes." The words were thick with emotion, her voice cracking as happy tears spilled down her cheeks. It was a moment of pure joy, a moment that seemed to promise a lifetime of happiness. The restaurant erupted into applause, the other diners cheering, and Jacob was grinning ear to ear, looking every bit as elated as she felt. The waiter came by, pouring champagne into their glasses, and they clinked them together in celebration. For a few blissful hours, Lydia floated in a cloud of excitement, her mind unable to wrap around the weight of the future she had just said yes to. She was going to marry Jacob, the man she loved, and build a life with him. This was the beginning of something beautiful, she thought. This was the fairy tale she had always dreamed of. But even as she reveled in the glow of that perfect moment, the first shadow began to creep in. Just 2 days later, as Lydia and Jacob sat down for dinner with his mother, Megan. Lydia felt it. Megan, a woman who had always exuded a certain level of confidence that could easily slip into arrogance, was already casting a shadow over their happiness. She was everything. Lydia wasn't polished, poised, and seemingly perfect in every way. She was a top real estate agent, dressed in an immaculate designer suit, her silver blonde hair flawlessly styled, and her voice commanding the attention of every room she entered. Megan's first words upon seeing the ring were not about its beauty, not even about how excited she was for Lydia. No. Her first comment was about its investment potential. She had picked up Lydia's hand, inspecting the ring with an air of practiced indifference before saying, "A VVS one, I assume." Jacob knows better than to skimp on clarity. Lydia's stomach tightened, but she forced a smile, nodding and mumbling something about how the ring was beautiful. But Megan was already moving on. Megan's gaze shifted from the ring to the future wedding. And just like that, Lydia's carefully constructed world of dreams began to unravel. "Well, now the wedding," Megan said, her eyes gleaming with something Lydia couldn't quite place. "We need to start planning immediately. The best venues get booked 2 years in advance." She spoke with such authority, as if Lydia had no say in the matter. Jacob, sitting beside her, just smiled and squeezed Lydia's hand, whispering, "Mom's an expert at this stuff." In the beginning, Lydia tried to be understanding. She was busy with work, launching a major campaign for a new software suite, and she didn't mind the idea of Megan stepping in to help with the wedding plans. After all, she was experienced. She had been married before, and in Lydia's mind, she probably knew what she was doing. But as the conversation continued, Lydia's excitement started to wane. Megan began talking about wedding venues, suggesting an extravagant ballroom with a 500 guest capacity, far more than Lydia had ever imagined. 500 guests, a ballroom. Lydia's mind raced. "That's not what we were picturing," she said carefully, trying to voice her concerns. But Megan wasn't hearing it. "Nonsense," Megan replied, dismissing Lydia's words with a flick of her wrist. "Jacob has business associates, I have clients, and your parents will have their list. It adds up quickly. You can't start a marriage by offending half the people." Megan's voice was confident, almost imperious, as if the entire wedding had already been decided. Lydia glanced at Jacob for support, but he was too busy studying the menu, as if he hadn't even heard a word Megan had said. This was the first time Lydia felt a cold knot of unease in her stomach. Later, in the car, Lydia brought it up. "Jacob, she put a hold on a venue without even asking us. Don't you think that's a little too much?" Jacob sighed, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "She's just excited. You know how much this means to her. She's been talking about my wedding since I was a kid." He said it so casually, as if that was supposed to reassure her. But all Lydia could think about was how the wedding had suddenly become something entirely different. She wasn't sure if it was for her anymore, or if it was just Megan's grand vision taking shape before her eyes. "But it's our wedding." "Jacob," Lydia said, frustration creeping into her voice. "Shouldn't it mean more to us?" Jacob reached over and squeezed her hand, his voice softening. "Of course it does. It will be perfect. Just let her handle the big stuff. We can take care of the little details." He said it with such ease, as if it were that simple. But it wasn't. Lydia could feel it deep in her gut. This wasn't about a wedding anymore. It was about something much bigger, and she was already losing control of it. At first, Lydia tried to push those feelings aside. She focused on work, keeping herself busy, and tried to ignore the growing sense that she was losing her voice in the midst of the wedding planning chaos. But it wasn't long before it became clear that this wasn't just about one decision, or even about one day. Megan had an opinion on everything: the photographer, the florist, the food, the venue, the guest list. And Jacob, who once seemed so enthusiastic about their life together, was slipping further and further away from the person Lydia had thought she knew. He had become a spectator in their own relationship, allowing his mother to dictate the most important day of their lives without ever stepping in to protect Lydia. With every decision, Lydia's frustration grew, and yet she kept trying to make it work, trying to see it from Jacob's perspective. But the deeper she got into this wedding planning nightmare, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about flowers or invitations. It was about control, about who would have the final say in their future, and it wasn't Lydia. When she finally sat down with Jacob to voice her concerns again, he responded with the same detached calm he had adopted over the last few weeks. Mom knows what she's doing. She's just trying to help. He dismissed her worries with a casual wave of his hand. It's no big deal, Lyd. She's paying for most of it, so why not let her handle the big stuff? Lydia stared at him, her heart sinking. She had thought that when she said yes to Jacob, she was saying yes to a partnership, to a shared future. But now, she realized that the life she had envisioned was already slipping away from her, like sand through her fingers. She wasn't just marrying Jacob. She was marrying into a family where his mother would always come first. And that was the first moment when Lydia knew things would never be the same again. It started slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. Lydia, busy with her work, tried to focus on the excitement of her engagement, the joy of planning a wedding with the man she loved. Jacob, who had always been so thoughtful and considerate, seemed equally eager to begin their journey together. But as the weeks passed, Lydia began to feel like she was being pulled into a whirlwind that wasn't of her making. It was the small things at first. Megan would casually drop by, often unannounced, to offer suggestions, always with a little too much authority. Lydia told herself it was harmless at first. After all, Megan had been married before and was far more experienced in the world of luxury events and grand ceremonies. She assumed it was just a case of a mother wanting to help her son and his fiancé. What she didn't realize was that Megan's idea of helping was far more controlling than Lydia had imagined. One Sunday, a few weeks into their engagement, Lydia sat down at a local cafe with Jacob and Megan to discuss some ideas for the wedding. Lydia, excited to get the ball rolling, had pulled together a Pinterest board full of inspiration pictures of rustic venues, soft floral arrangements, and simple, intimate settings. She'd poured her heart into the selection, imagining a celebration that reflected who they were as a couple. Her idea was to have an elegant, small-scale event, one with meaning and charm, surrounded by close family and friends. It would be personal, real, and something they could cherish forever. When Lydia shared her Pinterest board, Megan's response was less than enthusiastic. Megan didn't even glance at the screen for more than a second before she closed her planner with a decisive snap and set it down on the table. "Quaint," she said dismissively, her perfectly manicured nail tapping on Lydia's laptop. "This is nice, Lydia, but a wedding is a statement. It's the social launch of your partnership. It needs to be sophisticated. Think less hay bales and more crystal chandeliers." She smiled, as though offering Lydia a lifeline, but Lydia felt her stomach twist in frustration. Megan opened her leather-bound planner, the pages glossy and pristine, like something out of a high-end bridal magazine. "I've already put a hold on a venue," she said, her voice full of authority. "The Grand Majestic downtown. It's perfect. The catering is divine, and the guest capacity is 500. We'll need it." Lydia blinked, trying to digest what she just heard. "Wait, what? she asked, feeling her world tilt slightly. 500 guests, a ballroom, that's not really what we were picturing. We were thinking something much smaller, maybe 100 people at tops. Megan's response was immediate. She waved her hand dismissively as if Lydia's idea was a mere inconvenience. Nonsense. Jacob has business associates, I have clients, and your parents will have their list. It adds up quickly. You can't start a marriage by offending half the people. Megan was speaking, as if the number of guests in the grand venue were non-negotiable, as if Lydia's personal preferences didn't matter in the slightest. Lydia turned to Jacob, hoping he would step in, but instead, he just smiled, squeezed her hand, and shrugged. "Mom's an expert at this stuff," he whispered, as though that were supposed to make her feel better, but it didn't. It made her feel like an outsider in her own wedding, like a guest at a party she wasn't even invited to plan. "This is just how things work, Lydia," Megan continued, ignoring Lydia's mounting unease. "You can't have a wedding of this caliber without proper sophistication. Trust me, I know these things." The cold knot in Lydia's stomach only grew tighter as Megan went on, outlining extravagant details she hadn't even been consulted about. Lydia's frustration started to simmer. She had hoped, when Jacob proposed, that their wedding would be a reflection of their love, a day that felt personal and true to them, but now it felt like it was becoming something else entirely, a production, a spectacle, a performance for everyone else except them. She had imagined a small venue with an intimate guest list, a wedding where the focus was on their relationship, their connection, and their future together. Instead, it seemed like Megan had already mapped out the event, down to the last detail. Later that evening, after the dinner had ended, Lydia tried to talk to Jacob about what had just happened. "Jacob," she started, her voice tight. "She put a hold on a venue without even asking us. She hasn't even considered our preferences. We need to talk about this." Jacob, who had been mostly quiet during the dinner, let out a sigh as he leaned back in his seat. "She's just excited, Lyd. She wants this wedding to be perfect for us. She's been dreaming about planning my wedding for years." His voice was calm, almost too calm, and Lydia could hear the faintest trace of annoyance, as if her concerns were an overreaction. Lydia's eyes narrowed. "But Jacob, it's not just about her. It's our wedding. Shouldn't that mean more to us?" Jacob's gaze softened, and he reached for her hand. "Of course it does. I just think we should let her help with the big stuff. She knows what she's doing. We'll handle the details, okay?" "The big stuff," Lydia repeated, her voice rising slightly. "It's everything. Jacob, everything we're supposed to have a say in is being decided for us. We can't just sit back and let her plan our wedding." Jacob looked away, clearly uncomfortable with the growing tension between them. "She's just trying to help. Let her do what she's good at. We'll figure out the small things together." But it wasn't about the small things. Lydia realized then that the small things were quickly becoming the big things. It wasn't just the venue. It wasn't just the guest list. It was the entire vision for their wedding that was being hijacked. And Jacob wasn't even stepping in to protect her. Instead, he was standing by, letting his mother take control of their future together. The next few days were a blur of uncomfortable interactions. Megan's influence over the wedding continued to grow. She would email Lydia links to extravagant venues, florists, and photographers, each one more expensive and grandiose than the last. Every time Lydia tried to suggest something more personal, something more intimate, Megan would dismiss it with a laugh, as though her opinion didn't matter. It became clear to Lydia that she was no longer making decisions about her own wedding. Megan was the one making those decisions, and Jacob, her fiancé, was letting it happen. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the fact that Jacob was so passive or the fact that he didn't seem to understand why she was so upset. One afternoon, Lydia decided to confront Jacob again. "I can't do this," she said, her voice steady but filled with frustration. "I feel like I'm being erased from my own wedding. It's not just the venue or the guest list anymore. It's everything. You and your mom are making all the decisions, and I'm just along for the ride." Jacob looked at her, a furrow between his brows. "Lydia, it's not like that. You're being dramatic. Mom is just helping. Okay, she's been planning weddings for years, and she wants the best for us. Can't you just let her do this?" Lydia shook her head, her heart pounding. "No, Jacob, I can't just let her take over. This wedding isn't just about a fancy venue or catering, it's about us. About what we want together. I feel like I'm losing you to her." Jacob's face hardened, and he stood up from the couch. "You don't understand, Lydia. She's been a part of my life for so long, and she's just trying to make this special. Can't you just be grateful?" Lydia stood up too, her voice trembling with emotion. "Grateful for what? For being sidelined in my own wedding, for having my ideas discarded as if they don't matter. You're letting her plan everything without even asking me. I can't do this anymore. Jacob." He looked at her, his eyes tired, and for a moment, Lydia thought he might finally see the hurt in her eyes, but instead, he just sighed and shook his head. "I don't get why this is such a big deal. Lydia, it's just a wedding. Just let her help." "Okay." And in that moment, Lydia realized that Jacob wasn't the man she thought he was. He wasn't the partner she had imagined. He wasn't standing beside her in this. He was standing beside his mother, letting her dictate every detail of their life together, without a second thought for Lydia's feelings. The realization hit Lydia like a wave. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about her future with Jacob and the life they were supposed to build together. And right now, it didn't feel like a partnership at all. It felt like she was losing him, and the wedding wasn't even the most painful part. It was the fact that Jacob wasn't willing to fight for her, for their future, for what they both wanted. The weight of it all settled over Lydia as she sat there, looking at Jacob, trying to hold on to the man she thought she knew. But as the days passed, it became more and more evident that the man she had imagined her life with wasn't the one she was marrying. It wasn't the man who had proposed to her with such love and sincerity. It was someone else entirely, someone who couldn't, or wouldn't, stand up to his mother. Someone who was more than willing to let her take control of their wedding and their future. And as Lydia sat there, her heart heavy with the realization, she couldn't shake the thought that maybe this wedding wasn't a celebration of their love at all. Maybe it was just the first step in a much larger pattern of control, a pattern that would continue long after the wedding day was over. As the weeks dragged on, Lydia's growing unease was hard to ignore. It wasn't just the initial brush off of her ideas about the wedding. It was the way Megan's influence seemed to seep into every corner of the planning. What started as an occasional suggestion soon turned into a full-fledged takeover, one that Lydia felt powerless to stop. At first, she thought maybe she was overreacting. After all, Megan was experienced, and weddings could be stressful. But the more she tried to voice her opinions, the more she realized that Megan wasn't interested in collaboration. She wanted control. The first big blow came with the guest list. Lydia had carefully curated a list of about 75 people, close friends, family, and a few colleagues she thought would bring a personal touch to the event. It was a manageable number, one that felt intimate, warm, and reflective of their relationship. But when Megan saw it, she let out a scoff. 75 people, are you sure that's enough? Megan had asked, looking at Lydia with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. You can't invite only your closest friends and family to a wedding. This is a social event, Lydia, a statement. Lydia blinked, caught off guard by the coldness in Megan's tone. I thought it was supposed to be about us, she replied, her voice soft but firm. It is, Megan said, but there was a certain condescension in her voice that Lydia didn't miss. But it's also about your new network. Jacob's business associates, my clients, your parents' social circle, they all need to be here. You can't start a marriage by offending half the people who matter. Lydia's heart sank. The weight of it felt suffocating, like she was being forced into a role that wasn't her own. She wanted an intimate celebration, a small gathering where the focus would be on their love, not on impressing strangers. But Megan wasn't hearing it. I'll take care of the guest list, she said, dismissing Lydia's concerns with a wave of her hand. You just focus on the details. Lydia had tried to argue, but Megan had already taken charge. Over the next few days, the guest list grew rapidly, from 75 to 200, then to 500. And with each name Megan added, Lydia felt more and more like a spectator in her own wedding. Megan's list included not just distant relatives Lydia had never met, but people who didn't even know her or Jacob. It wasn't just friends or family, it was a carefully curated collection of business partners, clients, and people who would elevate the status of the event. Each name was a pawn in Megan's social game, an attempt to make the wedding not just an event for Lydia and Jacob, but a spectacle that would solidify Megan's position in the community. Lydia tried to stand her ground. She met with Jacob, trying to convey how overwhelming this all felt. Jacob, this is getting out of hand, she said one evening, as they sat on the couch, the soft glow of the television casting shadows in their apartment. I understand that your mom wants to help, but she's completely disregarding what we wanted. This isn't our wedding anymore, it's hers. Jacob sighed, setting his glass of wine down on the coffee table. Lydia, you have to understand. My mom wants the best for us. She's just trying to make sure everything goes smoothly. Smoothly, Lydia repeated, frustration creeping into her voice. Jacob, she's taking over everything. I'm not even allowed to choose the venue or the flowers without her input. And every time I try to suggest something, she shoots it down. I'm starting to feel like I don't even have a say in my own wedding. Jacob rubbed his temples, clearly uncomfortable. I get it, I do, but she's been planning my wedding in her head for years. You know how she is. You're just going to have to let her do this. I promise. We'll figure out the small details later. Lydia felt her stomach churn. The small details were becoming the only things that mattered to her, but Jacob wasn't listening. The more he shrugged off her concerns, the more she realized that he was either complicit in Megan's plan or too passive to see what was happening. Either way, Lydia was being swept along in a current she didn't want to be part of. The wedding venue was another point of contention. Lydia had always dreamed of a small, intimate setting, something cozy and warm, a venue that felt personal, with natural light and beautiful greenery. Perhaps something along the lines of a countryside estate or a rustic barn. But when Lydia showed Megan a few venues she had found, Megan wasn't impressed. "This is nice," she said, "but it's not really what I had in mind." Lydia felt a pang of disappointment. The venues she had chosen felt perfect to her. Charming, elegant, and reflective of who they were. But to Megan, they were quaint, not grand enough, not prestigious enough. Megan took the reins, calling up some of the city's most expensive venues, including one called the Grand Majestic. Lydia had heard of it before. It was a stunning ballroom, located downtown, with grand chandeliers and enough space for 500 guests. It was beautiful. Yes, but it wasn't what Lydia had envisioned. Megan, however, was already in love with the idea. "I've already put a hold on the Grand Majestic," she announced one day, as though it were a done deal. "It's booked for October. I'll handle the rest." Lydia felt her heart sink. She hadn't even been consulted. She hadn't had the chance to say whether it was right for her and Jacob. She felt like she was being dragged along, unable to make any decisions of her own. "Megan, we haven't even agreed on a venue," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "This isn't the wedding we wanted," but Megan wasn't hearing it. "I know what's best for this wedding," she said, her tone firm. "The Grand Majestic is where you'll get the most exposure. It's the only place that can accommodate the guest list. Trust me." And Jacob, well, Jacob just nodded along, as if it was all part of the plan. "Mom's just excited," he said, squeezing Lydia's hand. "She wants it to be perfect." Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that it was never about perfection. It was about Megan's ego. The wedding wasn't about them as a couple. It was about what would look good, what would impress others, what would elevate Megan's status in the community. It wasn't about love or the union of two people. It was about the show, and Lydia was just a prop in the background. As the days passed, it became clearer and clearer that Lydia was losing control over her own wedding. Every decision, from the florist to the photographer to the caterer, was being made by Megan. Lydia had suggested a local florist who specialized in wildflowers and rustic arrangements. Something simple, something that reflected her own tastes. But Megan wasn't interested. Wildflowers, she had scoffed. "We're having orchids. Imported ones? Of course." Lydia's suggestion was quickly dismissed as unsophisticated, and Megan's high society florist took over. The photographer was another point of contention. Lydia had wanted someone who could capture candid, emotional moments, someone whose style was more natural and less posed. But Megan had other ideas. She insisted on a photographer who specialized in stiff, formal portrait shots that looked more like corporate annual reports than wedding photos. And again, Lydia's objections were brushed aside. "This is what you need for a wedding like ours," Megan said, as if Lydia's opinion didn't matter. Jacob didn't step in. He didn't say a word. He just let his mother make all the decisions, letting her take over the entire process. Every time Lydia tried to voice her frustration, Jacob seemed to distance himself further. He was either too busy with work or too unwilling to get involved. When Lydia tried to confront him about it, he would say things like, "Mom's just trying to help," or "She's paying for a lot of it, so we should let her have some say." But it wasn't about the money, it was about Lydia's sense of self. It was about her sense of agency, of control over a day that was supposed to be about her and Jacob, not Megan. And every time Jacob defended his mother, Lydia felt more and more isolated, like a spectator at her own wedding. The worst part was the guest list. Megan had taken over the entire thing, creating a list that was nothing short of a corporate networking event. Lydia's family, her closest friends, were relegated to the back of the list, while Megan's business associates and clients were placed front and center. Lydia had always imagined walking down the aisle to the smiling faces of her loved ones, people who knew her, who supported her. But now, the guest list was filled with people who barely knew her at all. People who were there not to celebrate her and Jacob, but to bask in the grandeur of the event. And that's when Lydia realized this wedding wasn't about her at all. It wasn't about her love for Jacob. It was about Megan's need for validation, her desire to make a statement, to prove something to the world. And Jacob, the man she thought she was building a life with, was complicit in all of it. Lydia sat in the car one evening, staring out the window, feeling more alone than she ever had before. She had dreamed of a wedding that felt like them, something personal and beautiful. But now, all she saw was a spectacle, a performance. She felt like she was losing herself, losing the future she had imagined, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The knot in her stomach tightened. Megan had taken over everything, and Jacob had allowed it to happen. Lydia felt a sense of alienation creeping in, slowly but surely, as if she were becoming a stranger in her own life. Her wedding had been hijacked by a woman who saw it as an opportunity to showcase her own wealth and power. And Jacob had allowed it all to happen without a second thought. And the more Lydia thought about it, the more she realized that this wasn't just about the wedding. It was about the rest of her life. This was the man she was supposed to marry, the man who was supposed to be her partner. But right now, it didn't feel like a partnership at all. It felt like she was fighting a battle she couldn't win. A battle against a force far stronger than she had ever imagined. The tension had been building for weeks, but Lydia hadn't realized just how deep the divide had become until the moment the words finally spilled out. She had tried over and over again to get Jacob to understand, to show him how his mother's control over their wedding had made her feel powerless and invisible. But every time, Jacob had either dismissed her concerns with a casual shrug or avoided the conversation entirely. He didn't want to make waves, didn't want to upset his mother, and didn't seem to grasp the growing rift between him and Lydia. It all came to a head one evening when Lydia, feeling more isolated than ever, sat down with Jacob in their living room. The apartment was quiet, the city lights twinkling through the windows, but the silence between them felt thick and suffocating. Jacob had been distant for weeks, absorbed in work and avoiding any serious discussions about the wedding. Every time Lydia tried to talk to him, it felt like she was speaking to a stranger. The man she had once known, the man who had proposed to her with so much love and sincerity, seemed to be slipping away, replaced by someone who was content to let his mother call all the shots. "Jacob, we need to talk," Lydia said, her voice calm but firm. She had been holding this in for far too long, and she couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. She couldn't keep ignoring the gut-wrenching feeling that something was terribly wrong. Jacob looked up from his tablet, his brow furrowed. "About what?" he asked, clearly distracted. Lydia took a deep breath. She had to do this. She had to make him see. "About the wedding. Jacob," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "About everything." Jacob sighed and set the tablet down, rubbing his eyes. "Lydia, we've been over this. Mom is just helping out. She's excited, and she wants it to be perfect for us." "No, Jacob," Lydia said, her voice gaining strength. "This isn't about her helping. This is about her taking over everything. The guest list, the venue, the flowers, everything has been decided without me. She's making decisions for our wedding like it's her own, and you're letting her do it." Jacob looked uncomfortable, but his eyes hardened. "She's just trying to make sure we have the best wedding possible. Why can't you just let her handle it? You know she's been planning this for years." Lydia felt the anger rise in her chest, the frustration she had been holding back for so long threatening to spill over. The best wedding possible? This is supposed to be about us, Jacob, about what we want, not what she wants. I don't even feel like I have a say anymore. I've been pushed to the side, and you're letting it happen. Jacob leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed over his chest. "I'm not letting anything happen, Lydia. I'm just trying to make peace. My mom is paying for a huge portion of the wedding. She's been dreaming of this day for years. And you..." He cut himself off, looking uncomfortable. "You just don't get it. She's doing this because she loves me. She wants the best for us." Lydia stood up, her heart racing with a mix of anger and hurt. "Jacob, this isn't love. It's control. She's controlling every single part of this wedding, and you're just letting her. You're siding with her over me. You're letting her dictate what our future looks like, and I can't do it anymore." Jacob's face twisted with frustration, and he stood up too, his voice rising. "What do you want me to do? Lydia, you're making this out to be something it's not. She's excited. Okay, she's trying to help. You should be grateful." Lydia took a step back, feeling like the ground beneath her was shifting. Grateful for what? Jacob. For being treated like a prop in our own wedding, for having my ideas dismissed at every turn, for being told what I want is insignificant compared to what your mom thinks is best. Her voice cracked as the hurt she had been holding back for so long finally poured out. "I'm not some accessory in this wedding. Jacob, I'm your fiancé. I'm supposed to be your partner. But you're not acting like it. You're acting like you're still a child, caught between your mother and the woman you're supposed to marry. And it's killing me." Jacob's face softened for a moment, and he took a step toward her. "Lydia, please." No, Jacob," she interrupted, her voice shaking. "This isn't just about a wedding anymore. It's about everything. It's about us. And it's about how I feel completely invisible in this relationship. You're so wrapped up in what your mom wants that you're forgetting about what I need. And I need you to be here with me, not with her." Jacob opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Lydia could see the conflict in his eyes, but there was something else there too. Something she couldn't quite place. It was like he was hearing her, but he wasn't really listening. Like he didn't fully understand the depth of her pain, or worse, didn't care enough to fight for her. "Why aren't you fighting for me?" "Jacob," Lydia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why aren't you standing up for me? Why does everything have to be about what your mom wants?" Jacob took a step back, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what you want me to say, Lydia. She's my mom. She's always been there for me. I can't just throw her aside." "Throw her aside," Lydia repeated, the hurt in her voice raw. "I'm not asking you to throw her aside. I'm asking you to stand by me, to be my partner, to make decisions with me, not with her. This isn't about me being difficult or unreasonable, Jacob. This is about me feeling like I'm being erased from my own life, from our own wedding, and you're letting it happen." Jacob's eyes were filled with frustration, and his jaw tightened. "I don't get why you're making such a big deal out of this. She's just trying to help us. Why can't you just let her?" Lydia felt the tears start to well up in her eyes, but she fought them back. She had been fighting for so long, trying to make Jacob see what was happening, but it felt like she was talking to a wall. Because it's not about help, Jacob, it's about control. Your mom is controlling everything, and you're letting her. "I don't want this wedding anymore. I don't want this life with you if it means I'm constantly competing for your attention. If it means that your mom always comes first." Jacob took another step back, his face hardening. "This is ridiculous, Lydia. I can't believe you're making this such a big deal. I'm not asking you to throw a tantrum over invitations and flowers. It's just a wedding." Lydia's heart shattered as the weight of his words sank in. "Just a wedding," she repeated, her voice breaking. "Just a wedding. This is our wedding, Jacob. This is supposed to be the start of our life together. And you're treating it like a business transaction, like it's just something to check off a list. You don't get it. You never have." The silence between them was deafening. Lydia stared at him, her chest tight with pain, but Jacob didn't look back at her. He couldn't or wouldn't see what was right in front of him. Lydia had hoped that this conversation would bring them closer, that maybe Jacob would finally understand her feelings. But instead, it had only pushed them further apart. It was like the man she had fallen in love with had disappeared, replaced by someone who couldn't or didn't want to fight for her. In that moment, Lydia realized the full extent of the deception. This wasn't just about a wedding. This wasn't just about her wedding being hijacked by Megan. This was about everything. It was about Jacob's complicity in the entire process. It was about his willingness to let his mother make all the decisions, to let her take control of their life together without ever once asking what Lydia wanted. Lydia had always believed in love. She had always believed in partnership, in two people coming together to create something beautiful. But now, standing there, she realized that the partnership she had imagined was a fantasy. The man she was supposed to marry wasn't the man she thought he was. He wasn't capable of standing up to his mother, of protecting their future together. He wasn't capable of putting her needs before his own family's. And that was the moment she knew she had to make a choice. She couldn't marry someone who didn't see her, who didn't fight for her. With tears threatening to spill over, Lydia turned away from him, feeling a sense of finality wash over her. She had given everything to this relationship, but it was clear now that she was alone in it. Jacob wasn't the man she thought he was, and her wedding wasn't the dream she had envisioned. "You need to figure out what you want." "Jacob," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm done. I can't keep fighting for something that isn't real." And with that, Lydia walked out of the room, leaving Jacob standing there, lost and confused, as the silence between them deepened. The future they had once planned together was now shattered, and Lydia had no idea what came next. But one thing was clear: she could no longer stay in a relationship where she wasn't seen, where she wasn't valued. The wedding was no longer the most important thing. The most important thing now was finding her own way forward without Jacob. Lydia had been suspicious for a while, but she had never expected to find what she did that afternoon. It all started innocently enough. Jacob had left for a meeting with clients, and Megan was off on one of her weekend getaways. The apartment was eerily quiet, and for the first time in a long while, Lydia found herself alone with her thoughts. Her frustration, her hurt, and the ever-growing sense of betrayal that had been festering inside her seemed to demand attention. She had promised herself that she wouldn't snoop, that she wouldn't go digging into Jacob's personal files, but there was a nagging feeling, a whisper of doubt that had taken root in her mind ever since the argument. Jacob had been so dismissive, so defensive about Megan's involvement, and Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on beneath the surface. Her gaze lingered on Jacob's desk in the corner of the room, the papers scattered across it. One folder, in particular, caught her eye. It was labeled Wedding Plan, the words scrawled across the top in neat, official-looking script. Lydia's heart began to race. She knew she shouldn't, but the pull to know the truth was too strong. She reached for the folder, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. The first thing that struck her was the amount of detail. It wasn't just a rough draft or a list of ideas, it was a full, polished plan, contracts, spreadsheets, and images all neatly compiled. Each section meticulously organized as if this were a corporate project rather than the wedding of two people in love. As she flipped through the pages, the names of vendors, deposits paid, and details about the venue began to fill her mind with growing dread. The first shock came when she saw the venue contract. There it was, the grand majestic, the ballroom that Megan had pushed for, the venue that Lydia had rejected as too grand, too impersonal, was already booked. Not only that, but it was booked for October, the exact date Jacob had told her they were still thinking about. But the most shocking part was that the contract wasn't signed by Jacob, or even by Lydia. It was signed by Megan Cross, with Mother of the Groom scrawled underneath her name. Lydia's breath caught in her throat as she reread the name on the dotted line. Megan had not only chosen the venue without her input, but she had also signed the contract in Lydia's absence. Lydia's hands shook as she flipped through more documents, each one confirming what she had feared. The catering invoice, dated weeks ago, listed a non-refundable deposit of $20,000. The photographer, the florist, the string quartet, all the major elements of the wedding had been booked, paid for, and decided without her. Lydia's heart sank further as she read through the files. each one a confirmation that the wedding wasn't hers at all. It was a carefully orchestrated event, designed by Megan to showcase her own wealth, her own status. Then Lydia stumbled upon the most damning piece of evidence, a spreadsheet titled Guest List Master, Tiered XLSX. Her eyes scanned the columns, noting the names of people she had never met: Megan's clients, her business associates, distant relatives who had no place at this celebration of Lydia and Jacob's love. But what made her stomach churn was the categorization of the guests. The names were divided into tiers, each labeled with a number. The tiered system wasn't about who mattered most to her and Jacob, it was about social status, about who was worth more in terms of influence and connections. Lydia's own family was relegated to Tier 2, while Jacob's business associates and Megan's high society friends were placed in Tier 1. But the most painful part was the comment next to her best friend, Sophia's name. Lydia's friend, teacher, place at a back table. Lydia's heart broke as she realized how little her relationship with Sophia, the woman who had been with her through thick and thin, was valued in this grand affair. It wasn't about the people who truly mattered. It was about status, about appearances. It wasn't about love at all. The final blow came when she opened a file titled The Wedding of Jacob and Lydia, an Affair to Remember. It was a full PowerPoint presentation, the kind of thing one might expect for a corporate pitch. Not a personal celebration. The first slide was a professionally designed monogram with the letters J and M, but Lydia's initial was nowhere to be found. As she clicked through the slides, her blood ran cold. There were photos of bridesmaid dresses Megan had chosen gold, sequined gowns that looked more suited for a Hollywood awards show than a wedding. A 7-tiered cake was planned, adorned with gold leaf and sugar flowers, completely at odds with the simple, elegant cake Lydia had envisioned. And then there was the final slide, a honeymoon in the Mediterranean on a luxury cruise liner. Lydia had always told Jacob that her dream was to hike through Patagonia, to explore the rugged beauty of South America. But here, on the slide, was the honeymoon Megan had planned for them a week on a cruise ship, filled with elderly guests and formal dinners. The thought made Lydia's stomach turn. This wasn't her dream. This wasn't even Jacob's dream. It was Megan's dream for them. Lydia sat back in the chair, her heart pounding in her chest as the weight of it all settled over her. Every single detail of the wedding had been planned without her input. Every single decision, from the venue to the guest list to the honeymoon, had been made by Megan. Jacob had known. He had known all along, and he had kept it from her. Lydia could feel the betrayal in her bones. She had trusted Jacob. She had believed in their relationship, in their partnership. But now, she understood the full extent of the deception. This wasn't just about a wedding, it was about control. It was about Megan taking charge of something that was supposed to belong to her and Jacob. And Jacob, the man she was supposed to marry, had allowed it to happen. He had kept her in the dark, letting his mother make all the decisions, letting her dictate their future without ever once questioning her. Lydia's mind raced, her emotions tumbling over each other. She'd been living a lie, and the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Jacob had lied to her. He had allowed his mother to take over their wedding, to strip away everything that was supposed to be meaningful about this day. Lydia wasn't just the bride, she was a character in someone else's story, a supporting role in Megan's grand production. With tears welling in her eyes, Lydia grabbed the folder and slammed it shut. The weight of the discovery was unbearable. She felt sick to her stomach, as though the world she had built with Jacob was crumbling before her eyes. Every moment of joy, every hope she had for their future together, now seemed tainted by the lies, the manipulation, and the complete lack of respect for her as a person. As she sat there, surrounded by the cold reality of what she had discovered, Lydia knew that this was it. This wasn't just a misunderstanding or a small slip-up. This was a calculated effort by Jacob and his mother to control every aspect of her life, to turn their wedding into a performance for their own benefit. And the worst part was that Jacob had let it happen. He had chosen to side with his mother to protect her ego, rather than stand by his fiancé and fight for what was right. Lydia stood up, her hands shaking as she put the folder back on the desk. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she stared at it, the evidence of everything she had been kept in the dark about, everything that had been planned behind her back. There was no going back from this. The truth was out, and Lydia knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. The man she was supposed to marry wasn't the man she thought he was, and the future they had planned together wasn't the future she wanted anymore. It was a future built on lies, on manipulation, and on betrayal. And in that moment, Lydia knew what she had to do. She had to walk away. She had to free herself from the wedding, from Jacob, and from the life she had been living. It was time to take control of her own story, to write a new future for herself. The wedding, the relationship, the life they had built, everything had been a lie, and Lydia couldn't live in that lie anymore. The discovery of the truth about her wedding, the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation was a shock to Lydia's system, but it also ignited something inside her that had been dormant for far too long, a sense of clarity. The anger and pain that had consumed her in the hours after she uncovered Jacob's secrets began to fade, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She knew now that the life she had been living with Jacob was not the future she wanted, and she wasn't going to allow herself to be dragged into a life built on lies. She had to take control, not just of her wedding, but of her entire future. The first thing Lydia did was gather evidence. She had to make sure that when she left with all the pieces of the puzzle in place. She wasn't going to leave anything behind for Jacob or Megan to twist, to deny, or to hide. She went back to Jacob's files, the ones that had opened her eyes to the truth, and meticulously copied everything. The contracts, the invoices, the guest list, the emails. Each document was a testament to the way they had both lied to her. She couldn't ignore the fact that Jacob had signed off on everything. He had known about his mother's plans, and he had been complicit in keeping her in the dark. Every piece of evidence she gathered was a weapon, a tool she could use to ensure that she would be heard, that her side of the story would be told. But gathering evidence wasn't enough. Lydia knew that she couldn't confront Jacob or Megan just yet. She had to be strategic. This wasn't just about standing up for herself in the moment. It was about taking back her power, about reclaiming her life on her terms. And that meant making a plan. She started with the logistics, things like finances and the apartment. The joint bank account that she and Jacob shared had been a tool of control for so long, and now it was time to separate herself from it. She took careful stock of what she had contributed to their shared account, calculating how much she would need to withdraw before she closed it. The last thing she wanted was to be financially dependent on Jacob or tied to him in any way, and she made her escape. Her job, too, was part of her escape plan. She had received an offer from a rival tech company months ago, a position that would require her to relocate to a new city. At the time, she had turned it down, believing her future was with Jacob. But now, with everything that had unfolded, she saw it as her ticket out. It was her chance to start fresh, to build a life that was truly her own. She didn't hesitate. She emailed the recruiter, explaining her change in circumstances and expressing her interest in reconsidering the offer. To her surprise, the recruiter replied almost immediately, telling her that the position was still available and that they could fast-track the process. Lydia felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was it. This was her chance to rebuild. As the days passed, Lydia's sense of empowerment grew. She no longer felt like a victim of her circumstances. She was taking control, and with every small step, she felt herself becoming stronger. She reached out to Sophia, her best friend, the one person she could trust. Lydia shared everything what had happened, what she had discovered, and what she planned to do. Sophia, always level-headed, didn't hesitate. She helped Lydia with the legal details, guiding her on how to separate her finances, how to protect her assets, and how to make sure Jacob couldn't access any of her personal information once she left. But there was more to Lydia's plan than just the practicalities. She knew that when she left, she couldn't leave any room for negotiation. She had to leave decisively, with no chance for Jacob to talk her into staying. No chance for Megan to twist the situation in her favor. So, Lydia made sure that every detail of her departure was airtight. She found a new apartment in the city, one that was completely separate from anything she had shared with Jacob. It was a small but comfortable space, and more importantly, it was hers. She signed the lease in her name alone, a symbol of the new life she was about to build. When the moving company arrived to help her pack up, Lydia was calm, collected. She didn't need to make a big show of it. This was her quiet rebellion, her way of asserting her independence. The movers were professional, efficient, and discreet, which was exactly what Lydia needed. As they packed her belongings, she took one final sweep through the apartment, marking the items that were hers and the items she would leave behind. Anything that had come from Jacob, anything that felt tainted by him, she would leave. She didn't need it. With each box packed, each item removed from the apartment, Lydia felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had been carrying the burden of Jacob's deception for so long, and now she was freeing herself from it. It wasn't just the physical act of packing, it was the emotional weight, the realization that she was finally choosing herself. She was choosing her own happiness, her own future. And no one, certainly not Jacob or his mother, would take that away from her. When the movers finished, Lydia stood in the empty apartment, looking around one last time. It no longer felt like home. It felt like a prison, a place she had outgrown. She took a deep breath and walked out the door, closing it softly behind her. As she stepped into the elevator, her heart felt light. her mind clear. She was no longer tethered to a life that wasn't hers. She was free. The next few days were a blur of finalizing paperwork, packing her car, and making sure everything was in order. Lydia didn't tell Jacob. She didn't need to. He hadn't been a partner to her for months. Instead, she focused on herself, on her future, on the new chapter she was about to begin. She had a fresh start waiting for her in a new city, a new job, and a life she could call her own. As she drove out of the city, the place she had once called home, Lydia felt a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't running away. She was running toward something better. She was running toward herself, toward a future she had fought for and earned. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was hers to choose. Lydia's heart beat with a quiet confidence as she drove further away from the life she had left behind. She had taken control of her situation. She had gathered the evidence, made the hard decisions, and now she was starting fresh, no longer a victim of betrayal. She was now a woman on her own terms, empowered, free, and ready to build a life that was truly hers. Lydia's new life began the moment she crossed the threshold of her new apartment in the city. The space was small but bright, with high windows that let in the morning sunlight. It was hers completely and entirely hers. No more pretending. No more trying to fit into a life that wasn't meant for her. This was the beginning of something real. And although it was terrifying, it was also exhilarating. For the first time in months, Lydia felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Her job, which had once been the center of her identity, became a means to an end. It wasn't that she didn't care about marketing or the work she had done in the past. It was just that the world had shifted. The life she thought she was building with Jacob had crumbled, and with it, her sense of what mattered. She had been more than just a senior marketing manager, more than just a cog in the machine of a tech firm, but somehow being a part of a team again felt different now. The company she joined was smaller, but their culture was warm, collaborative, and deeply rooted in innovation. She had been hired as vice president of marketing, a role that stretched her in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the new responsibilities, it was the confidence that came with being seen, being heard, and knowing she was there because of her talent, not because of a relationship with someone who had overlooked her. The work was challenging, but it gave her a sense of purpose, something that had been missing in her life for far too long. It also gave her the opportunity to prove to herself that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She found herself leading a team, brainstorming new campaigns, and pushing creative boundaries she hadn't dared to approach. Before, it was like she was rediscovering the woman she had lost, strong, independent, and full of ambition. In her new city, she also began to rebuild her personal life. At first, it felt strange, like she was walking on unfamiliar ground. The friends she had in her old life no longer felt like a part of her reality. The relationships she had formed while planning a wedding that wasn't hers seemed distant and disconnected, but she didn't let that stop her. Lydia slowly but surely found herself making new connections, finding a new sense of community. She joined a hiking group, a local outdoor club where she could unwind and spend time in nature. It became one of her favorite parts of the week, getting out of the office, breathing fresh air, and talking to people who didn't know her history, who saw her for who she was now. It was liberating, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like the weight of her past was bearing down on her. She could just be herself, no strings attached. Her social circle grew in other ways too. She was introduced to people through work, and soon a few good friends emerged from the crowd. There was Ellie, a fellow marketing executive who became one of Lydia's closest confidants. They'd grab coffee after work, swapping stories about life, love, and everything in between. And then there was Mark, a fellow hiker who shared Lydia's love for exploring new places, whether it was a mountain trail or a hidden cafe in the city. Mark was kind, easygoing, and seemed to genuinely appreciate Lydia for who she was. No baggage, no expectations. And it was through these new relationships that Lydia learned to trust again. Not just others, but herself. She had spent so long questioning her own worth, wondering if she was asking for too much, if her expectations were too high. But in her new life, she found that she didn't have to settle. She could surround herself with people who valued her, people who saw her as an equal. Her relationships, both personal and professional, began to reflect the person she had become, not the person she had been in the shadows of someone else's life. As time went on, Lydia's sense of independence grew. The apartment that had once seemed small and lonely became a sanctuary, a space where she could truly relax and be herself. She filled it with books, plants, and artwork that reflected her newfound freedom. She no longer had to compromise or fit into anyone else's vision for her life. Everything she did now, she did on her terms. She wasn't afraid of her own space or her own company anymore. She had learned to be content with who she was, and more than that, she had learned to be proud of who she had become. And while Lydia was moving forward, her past wasn't something she could easily forget. She still thought about Jacob, about the love they had shared, about the dream she had once believed in. But the more time passed, the more Lydia realized that the future she had wanted with Jacob wasn't a future at all. It was a carefully constructed illusion, one that had been hijacked by his mother and manipulated by his unwillingness to choose her over his family. What was more painful than the relationship itself was the realization that the man she had loved had never been the man she thought he was. But in the quiet moments of reflection, Lydia also began to understand that leaving Jacob had been the most empowering decision she had ever made. She wasn't just walking away from him. She was walking away from a life that had never truly been hers. And that, more than anything, was what had held her back for so long. She had been afraid of losing the future she had imagined with him. But now, she knew that the life she was building without him was so much more authentic, so much more fulfilling. Looking back, Lydia realized just how far she had come. She had walked away from a future that was dictated by someone else's vision, and in doing so, she had discovered her own. She had learned to trust her instincts again, to stand up for herself, and to value her own worth. The pain of the betrayal had faded, replaced by a sense of self-assurance that she had never known before. Sitting on her balcony one evening, sipping coffee and watching the sunset over her new city, Lydia reflected on how far she had come. Her life was no longer a story written by someone else. It was her story, and she was the author. The weight that had once pressed so heavily on her chest was gone, replaced by a sense of freedom she had never thought possible. She smiled, knowing that the best part of her journey was just beginning. She had fought for her freedom, for her happiness, and now she was finally living it. For the first time in a long time, Lydia felt truly alive, free to make her own choices, free to live the life she had always dreamed of. And that was the most empowering feeling of all. Thank you so much for watching Lydia's journey, from heartbreak and betrayal to empowerment and self-discovery. Her story is a powerful reminder that we all have the strength to take control of our own lives, no matter the challenges. If you found inspiration in Lydia's story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of courage and transformation. Remember, no matter where you are, the future is always yours to shape.